Hi, can you hear me? Okay. So as Eduardo, I'm from Spain, but I will speak in English because this conference is in English. And I came from the Netherlands to Madrid, but I'm from Alicante. And today I want to talk to you about how you can unlock the power of web extensions using Vue and also the built-in AI APIs that we have in the browser. So the clicker is not working. One moment. Probably need to click first and then it will work. Well, I will click here. Yeah, so basically I create a demo so you can see the power, but also touch code and see the code in a GitHub repo that you will have later. And what I did is try to use the different capabilities of a web extension. First, use the storage in order to provide some kind of configuration for the end user. And also every time you select on text, it will appear some different context menu where you can select the specific option and then it will call the API in the browser for generating AI and it will come back with a result for the specific word you selected. So in order to do that, we need to first know what, why, and how we create web extensions nowadays. We will see the standard that is behind them and the structure that a web extension project follows. Then we will see open source packages that will make your life so much easier. They have DX made for you, so you don't need to bother about all the context of the browser or the different APIs. You will have everything done already there, so you will see it's so easy. And for frameworks, we also have templates for each of them, and a really huge framework for web extensions. That's the one I use for the demo. And at the end, we will see practical use cases. What is the mental model you need to follow in order to create one of these features? And we will see some code to demonstrate that. So first, what is a web extension? Well, it's as simple as a small program developed in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript as any single-page application that integrates into a browser and customizes and adds new functionalities to that specific browser. It can be Firefox, Chrome, whatever you are using. So why is important, or what is in it for me? Imagine you are doing a lot of manual tasks every day across the browser, and you think that's the only way to do it. No, there's web extensions. You can actually automate what you are doing by a script and have it there for you locally. You don't need to actually develop a web extension and publish it. You can use it just for you. So imagine you want to apply for a job and you find a lot of forms, and you end up having the same content in all these forms. You actually can save that content in the web extension, and every time you have a form, you just scrap it and copy-paste it everything. So you don't need to actually overdo it when you are doing something that can be simpler with a web extension. Or you can avoid having time-consuming tasks. But you can also format and add styles to things you see in the web. Imagine you have a disability, or you have a problem with your eyes. You can actually create an extension that modifies the website if they don't have proper themes. So it's as simple as having a solution for your problems. And how will you build it? What do you need to actually create a web extension? You need to know the manifest v3. It's a standard really simple that we will see as a source summary today. And then choose a framework to help you with the reactivity and don't need to overdo it with JavaScript, with vanilla JavaScript. So first, if you think about manifest v3 is a standard as any other standard we use in the web, and this time is for creating web extensions. And of course, this standard is served between different browsers. With the consortium, we have Firefox, Edge, and Chrome all sync, but you can also create web extensions with Safari. They will have different features, and that's where you will need to code more with polyfiles and so on. But if you use Chrome, of course, that's the most used one, then you will be fine with the manifest v3 only. And the manifest v3 defines a structure for your projects for web extensions. So you will find files, JavaScript, HTML, CSS, JSON, whatever, and then you will have components. The components are just the parts of your web extension. You will have a pop-up every time you click on an icon. You will have a content script that lives in the page you are navigating. You will have a background service worker that is executing every time the user does something in the browser. And you will have context that these components use and they are grabbed into. So the first file you will find in the structure of a web extension is the manifest.json. It's a file where the essential details are defined the same as package.json for us in a web project. And you will find the name of the extension, its descriptions, its functionalities. So every time you want to use a browser API, you will need to request permissions. And for that, you will need to put it in your manifest.json. And then we will find all the components of your extension as a path. So you will see every part of your extension, where is that code in your project. So if we see an example of a manifest.json, you will see that you have a similar structure to the package.json. You have the name, the version, whatever. And in the right side, you will see how it looks in the web store. So every time you search for an extension, that's what you will see, and it's coming from that manifest. Then you will have the permissions, as I told you. In this case, we only have active tab. It means that it only has access to the browser API that access that specific tab you are watching as a user. And then you will have the different links to where the files are located in your root of the project. So the next file you will find in the structure will be the background script. The background, as its name indicates, runs in the background and is grabbed in the service worker context. Before, in Manifest v2, they didn't have that. They have another context for the background. Now that it's a service worker, it's much faster. It doesn't intercept your main thread, so it's not a problem for the performance of your site, and that's, of course, a win. And you can handle any browser events that are happening because it's always listening. It's not like the other components of the web extension. So the first component that we will see is the pop-up, the sidebar pages. So every time you click on an icon, you will see that it appears like a pop-up. That's the pop-up page. And the sidebar is a new way of having a pop-up that you substituted. So if you have the sidebar, you will not have the pop-up. And the sidebar is one that sticks with you. So every time you click on the icon, it opens, but it doesn't close if you go around tabs. But the pop-up, it actually closes. So you need to decide your use case. For me, it's always better the pop-up because the sidebar is really intruding me when I'm navigating all the time there. I don't like it, but I guess it will have its use cases. And a pop-up is just a user interface created with JavaScript, HTML, CSS. So it's just a single page up. So you can do it with Vue, React, Angular, whatever you like. And this is a simple example on how a pop-up will look like. You have an HTML file, for example, and you have an H1 and a button. And then you will load your script, because first you need to load the HTML, and then the HTML will be able to load the script. And then in the script, for example, here I'm just adding a listener. So every time the user clicks on that specific button, it will render all the H1s in your page in red. What will happen if I do that? It will actually change the H1 of the pop-up, and not the H1 of the web page. That was my idea generally. And why is happening? Because it has its own context. You don't have access to another context unless you communicate with the other components of the web extension. So right now, every time I click on the button, you will see just the H1 red in the pop-up. But we have the content script. And the content script is a script that actually is embedded in the page you are navigating. So you have the page context. There is where this script should have been executed, but initially we didn't know. And to do that, you just need to, now in the pop-up, instead of executing that code, you will call the active tab that the user is seeing and send a message saying change color. Then in the content script, you will say, okay, I'm the content script is being called. I'm in this active tab. Yes. Is the message change color? Then I will change the H1s to red. And this is what will happen. The H1 will turn to red. So that's how you can interact with web extensions. Just sending message to the different contexts that you have in order to execute what you actually expected, like changing the color of a web page, H1. And then lately you will have other different components like option page, just to have all the configuration of the user in a different page, so it's not bothering you in the pop-up when you are seeing some preview or whatever. And of course, there's much more to it. You can change, override any Chrome pages that are available, like the bookmarks. So you can actually change the page of the bookmarks. You can change the history. change the entire look and feel that you are seeing. You can also extend DevTools, create your own tab for that, like Vue DevTools. Vue DevTools was created as a web extension, just extending the DevTools that you have so you can actually interact better with Vue. And then you have the context menu, so you can add options every time someone right-click on something. So you have so many possibilities with web extensions because, of course, there's a standard behind it. So just if you have a use case, I'm pretty sure you can solve it with web extensions. And now, let's see some packages that will make so much easier for you to develop Chrome extensions because there's no need to actually do it all in vanilla and know all the APIs by heart. You have first core projects like the web extension Polify created by Mozilla. Right now, it's not that needed anymore because they standardized it better, the APIs, but basically what it does is just create a wrapper between the different APIs that we have in Chrome and Firefox and try to make it a standard so you can use browser, and it will mean Chrome or Firefox. You don't know because they will actually do it for you. And of course, it includes typing. That is really nice because then you don't need to actually know everything by heart or check the docs. Then you have the WebEx. This project is amazing. It's a command line tool that what it does is allow you to develop, test, and deploy your web extensions via command line. So you can add the scripts to your JSON, and it will generate actually a preview environment of your web extension with a new profile, empty, without any Chrome extension, so you can actually test it when you are developing without any kind of interaction or integration with other ones. And then it will allow you to deploy it really with a command line instead of doing it you manually. That is usually the case if you don't have this package. Then for every of the features of the web extensions, you will find wrappers around it. So we have the storage that basically you have a different API for web storage or Chrome extensions or web extensions storage. So in order to use these storage APIs, you have wrappers created by different projects. And for example, the one I'm using is the WXT dev storage because it's the framework I'm using to create web extensions. But still, you have so many wrappers that you can use, and they simplify a lot on how you interact with the storage. You can have local, sync, manage. There's different ones, but maybe later in the demo, I can show you how that looks like in the browser. And then you also have a web extension bridge wrapper for the messaging. So as we saw, I was calling Chrome, tabs ID, whatever. You don't need to do that with these packages. You will just say, send message. To who? Background. To who? A script. And it will do it for you, all these typing of the APIs. So it's amazing. And of course, we have a lot of open source contributors that have created templates using already these core web packages I just showed you, but this time grouped with also the framework you like and Vite. So for example, we have Vitesse WebEx that was created by MadVue, that is the guy in Vue community that is creating everything, basically. And then we have Vite web extension for React. So you have for every major framework, you will have a template for that. But there's a kind of next vibe with WXT that is an opinionated framework to create web extension that makes most of it for you. And you just need to think, okay, I want this feature. I will implement my Vue code and forget about it because they will have all the capabilities for me. And now what I want to show you is a demo on how you will actually think when you are creating web extensions, what components you need to use for that use case, and how these components interact, and where you want to execute that action. So let's see the first use case. The first use case will be, as an extension user, I want to configure my preference once so that they apply consistently across the entire extension. So I just wanted to save them somewhere, isn't it? So in order to do that, we will need three components. We will need the pop-up or the option page. It depends on where you want to set up the preference. The web extension storage, so access to that storage. And in order to have access, I need to request access from the browser, saying, OK, give me permission to storage in the manifest.json. And then we will interact with this storage in the content script to show different options that the user selected. So the communication flow in your mind should be, OK, from the pop-up, I need to set the preference to the value that the user selected, save it in the storage, and then I can consume it from whatever I want. Of course, I will consume it back with the option space to have it sync with what is stored, and I will consume it back to the content script to showcase the different options I have. So now, let's see a little bit of code. And well, initially, I will show you how it looks like before showing you the code, so it's easier. Here you have the options I was talking about. So every time you click on one, it is being stored where? In the storage of the web extensions. So here, if I inspect, we can go to application and I can show you where it lives. So here you see I have the local extension storage that you use for website and extension storage. This is where it lives. So basically this, instead of being embedded to the page you are navigating, it's embedded to the browser. So every time you change something, it will change in every tab, not just in one, because it's in the context of the browser. That's why they have their own dedicated section, and they have different versions of it. But I'm just using local because that's the one I want to use. And what I did in order to have it sync is add a watcher in Vue. So every time I change it everywhere, it will apply and refresh in every place I'm actually showcasing these different storage components. So here, for example, if I click on a word, you see the different options I'm representing. This is the content script rendering what is stored in the web storage. So now if I change this one, it will remove the options because I didn't allow them. So that's how you can basically showcase the storage. And here I want to show you the code for that. Let me make it bigger because maybe it's too small. Yeah, well, maybe this is too much, but yeah. Okay, so initially, as I'm using the WXT framework, as I told you, it has an opinionated structure. So here you can see that in the entry points is where my components of the web extension lives. And then you have different folders for doing things like in NAS, basically. And in utils, I have my storage TypeScript file. And here, what I'm doing is using the grapper for storage. So instead of me defining everything I want, I'm just saying a storage that is coming already from this framework, defining them. I want preferences, and I want it to be local storage and not session, whatever. And here is my default values. So I just explain already what I want to save there when the user clicks on something. Then what I want, well, I have a component for that, is to create a list of preferences that they can toggle and change. So basically, in order to do that, I didn't want it to interact directly with the storage. I wanted to have a composable. So for that, I went to the composables and created one for preferences. And then if we close this, yeah, the only thing I did was, well, of course, as I'm using the Visual Studio Code from the GitHub, I don't have any extensions, so everything is broken, but it's fine. So here, the only thing I'm doing is getting this preference that I defined already, adding a watcher, so every time I change it, it will appear, and also I'm initializing it the first time I load it, and then I just create a function that updates this preference, so every time the user click on something, it will update, but yeah, a basic composable. And with that, I already have what I want, and what I did is in the content script, I just wanted to load these options to the browser, and for that I just call the preferences that are selected from the user from the composable and render them. And that's the only thing I did. Because with WXT, you already have everything when you do this. You're already saying, okay, every API of the browser, type it for me and save it here. So you don't need to actually think about it anymore. You just create your Vue composable, your Vue component, and that's it. And now I want to show you a second feature that is much more powerful than the previous one. And as an extension user, I want to see a menu when I select text on a page, so I can perform actions against it and extract its meaning using AI. And I don't want to use AI via an API that I need to have a token, whatever. So in order to do that, I will use three components. I will use the content script to select this content and showcase the options to the user. I want to use the built-in AI APIs from the browser, so I don't need to actually call any APIs for real, but just the ones in your browser. And I want to execute something in the background, because the background is the one that has option to communicate with these built-in AI APIs. But in order to have these built-in AI APIs, you actually need tokens, but because they are in trial. So right now, there's no stable version. Well, now with the Google I/O, if you watch it, now they actually release the conclusion and they will go up with them. But the idea is before we didn't know, so you needed to actually ask permissions for AI language model original trial and then provide your trial tokens that last 1 month. But actually, you can use it in production, even if they are in trial. So the communication flow here will be, okay, I selected a text. I want to generate a description out of it. So please get me that content. Okay, you need to ask first background, because background is the only one that can access it. Then the background will communicate with the AI, and then when it's generated, we'll go back to background, and the background will turn it back to the content script. So it's a little bit of a flow that, of course, make it slow, and that's why I added a small loaded spinner, but it still is much more quickly than if you are calling to an API, because at the end, it's built in a browser, and the first time you call it, you already downloaded the model for the user. So they don't need to download it again every time. So now let's see how that works. So first, if I select a word, you can see already that the description was generated by AI. And if I click on another of the options, it will generate the different things. So pillars of support for the new building words wrong. Yeah, this is a usage of the AI. But when you select a sentence, I decided to do something different. So in this case, I'm calling different AI APIs that they have, the summarize and translate. They are dedicated APIs for that. And if I summarize the text, it will probably summarize it longer, because I said medium length. But still, if you have a really long text, it will be smaller. And then you can translate it to the language that you selected. In this case, it was Spanish, so it will translate to Spanish. And how we will do that using the web extension. So first, in the content script, what I did is just, okay, I want to communicate with the background every time the user clicks on the sparkles and generates this response. So I send the action type, so I can handle everything in the background and don't care here. And then I send the selection from the user. So in the background is where I will just expect that message with onMessage. That is also a wrapper they have for the web extension communication. And here I will say, okay, when they want to get AI response, please get me the action, the selection, and I will give you something back. And in this switch, what I did is just, every time the action type is translated or summarized, I will go to the dedicated APIs they have for that. If not, let's go with the prompt API. That is a generic API you can use to generate anything with AI. So in order to do that, I just create a script to connect with them. For the summarizer, it's as simple as saying, okay, there's a summarizer API in the browser. Yes, then use it. Just create this option with medium length. That was the problem I was telling you about. And then you just summarize sending the text selection. As simple as that. You already generated something with AI. Then with the translator API will be a little bit more complex, because you need first to know the source text, which language it's in. And if it differs from the selection of the user, then you will be able to translate. Otherwise, you can create a translator to the same language, you know? So then when you have different source and target language, you will create the translator and translate the content. As simple as that. And lately, if you want to use AI in general with any other functionality, like the description, the usage, the etymology, you can create a session. You can create a session per tab, or you can create a session for the entire browser, and then say to the session, okay, assistant prompt, I want to be a linguistic person. And then you will provide for each of the actions a different prompt that, of course, will be wrapped with, please provide only the answer. And even if you say that, they will also give you the question. And it's like, why? Well, this is difficult, but still, most of the time it does it right. Just sometimes hallucinates, of course, because it's AI. But with this way, you can actually extract really a lot from the content you are reading. So now, every time I go to a page, as I'm not native person, so I don't burn with English, I can actually click on things and say, okay, what is this? Let's see. Supports for a building or other structure. Perfect. Now I know. And the good thing about AI when you are opening a session is, like, if you start navigating the same pages every time, they know the context. So once you ask for pillars again, but after maybe talking about Nordics, they will give you the pillars for the Nordics. So it's like you can actually make the session better if you are navigating always the same kind of content. So yeah, my boyfriend actually used it for CSGO, and now if every time he clicks on a name, it actually gives is this player, whatever. And maybe the name was Gemini, you know what I mean? So it's really cool and powerful if you actually use it for a use case that matters to you. And well, that was basically it. Just to let you know, as I told you, you can use it locally. So now the repository I will give you, you can download it and use it for you, for your personal use. You can change it, whatever, and you can just do it by going to extensions, clicking on developer mode, and then you will be able to upload it. And if not, you can also publish to everyone. So you can go ahead and publish to the Chrome Web Store, and everyone can use it. And that was it. Thank you so much. You can scan the QR for the repo, and you have all the resources there too.